Good morning, pros. Kate here. I am going to do a short lesson for you this morning on aspect ratio, cropping, and why every time your client orders a 16 by 20 canvas, you find this really annoying problem where you're losing the tops of people's heads or limbs or things that you just really don't want to lose in this annoying crop, and you're like, what the heck? Why is this happening? So here we are in Miller's ROES ordering system. I do all of my printing and products through Miller's, so that's why I'm in their ordering system. But this is just to demonstrate this is going to happen regardless of where you order your prints from. This is not an issue with Miller's or Bayphoto or MPix, and it's not an issue if your clients are ordering through a gallery like Shootproof or Pixieset. That's not what's causing this crop. This is just a simple math problem, and it's not as bad to figure out as it seems. It's just really aggravating, but math is the way it is, and we can't really change it up. So I'm going to go through explaining it to you as simply as I can. I stink at math, so this took me a long time to wrap my brain around, so I'm going to try to make it as simple and in layman's terms as I can, and hopefully this will help you to just be more mindful of this issue that we face as photographers when you're composing your images, so that you don't run into as many issues when you're in the ordering phase of your business. So what I'm going to do is show you an image right here on a 16 by 20 gallery wrap canvas. This is a very popular product for people to print in their home. I have them hanging all over my living room, and for some reason 16 by 20, sort of like an 8 by 10 print, has just become a very well-known and popular size among clients and consumers, even though it drives us photographers crazy. And I'll tell you why in a moment. So what I'm going to do is drag an image in here so you can see what's happening. And here in front of us, we have a beautiful family of four snuggling with each other. And there's some really great emotion going on here with the little girl and mom. There's some really great interaction and connection going on with dad and the little boy. But if you'll notice what's happening, this center square is representing the front of my canvas, and these side panels are representing the edges of my canvas. And as you can see, when those edges get wrapped around the frame of the canvas and they're no longer visible from the front, we'll end up losing the tops of mom and dad's heads, which is a really awkward crop and just not something that we like to see as photographers. So how can we prevent this, and why is it happening is sort of the question that I hear a lot. So here's why it's happening. When you take a photo in your camera's sensor, whether you're shooting with a full frame or a crop sensor, those have two different size sensors, meaning that a crop sensor is a smaller sensor, so it's automatically sort of a more zoomed in image. But both sensors, whether full frame or crop, are at a ratio or a proportion of 2 by 3. So the images that are coming out of your camera automatically will be coming out in a 2 by 3 aspect ratio, or the proportions. So basically, if you try to then print your image as anything that is multiples of 2 by 3, so a 4 by 6 print, an 8 by 12 print, a 16 by 24 print, any of those are going to print just fine without weird cropping happening if you're just doing a print. But the issue is when you try to print at a different aspect ratio or different proportions, meaning you're taking your 2 by 3 image out of your camera and now you're trying to print it as a 5 by 7 or an 8 by 10 or a 16 by 20, which are just totally different proportions. There's no way for you to multiply a 2 by 3 by one number and end up with a 16 by 20. It's just not the same proportion. So think back to math class. Basically, if you take a 16 by 20 and you try to break that down to the lowest common denominators, it just won't ever work out to 2 over 3, basically. Think of it like a fraction. And the way visual learners can imagine this is, think of your image in Photoshop. If you hold down the shift key and drag the corner, you can enlarge your image in your Photoshop canvas, but keep the same proportions, right? So nobody's face gets funhouse funky. Everything is in the same proportions. So that basically works the same in printing. You can enlarge the print without anything getting distorted or lost, as long as you're keeping the same aspect ratio or locking the proportions like you would be in Photoshop by holding down shift, meaning you're printing in the same aspect ratio. So a 4:6, an 8:12, or a 16:24, and the list goes on. You can continue to increase the sizes. So here we are with a 16:20 canvas, which we know is a 4:5 aspect ratio. It's just not a 2:3 aspect ratio. It can't be, no matter how we try to work it. And so we're always going to lose part of the image. And basically that's this part over here that you're no longer seeing when you adjust the crop like this. This edge over here is just being lopped off, which is all grass, so that's not a problem. So you're probably thinking to yourself, well, okay, it's not a problem then. So how come I'm losing their heads? Well, the reason that you're losing their heads on a gallery wrapped canvas is because there's 2.5 inches of canvas material on each side of your image, represented by these rectangles around the outside border, that needs to get stretched over the edges of your canvas and won't be visible from the front. This square is the part that is visible from the front. So there's just no way to prevent that from happening and have photo along the edges unless you just pick a more pulled back image. So one thing you can do is just be mindful of composition and give your clients a lot of images to choose from, and give them some to choose from that are pulled back further. So let's see if this one works better. So this one, I'm losing their feet, which again, I don't really like. But see this one of the little girl and the little boy, mostly what I need. I'm losing feet a little bit again, but the bulk of what I need is being maintained in that front, so that I can then have image around the edges stretched and have the most important parts sort of here on the front of the canvas. So what you could do, say that my clients want to order this image, and it's an emotional black and white of mom and dad with their heads together and a lot of really great emotion and love in this photo, but I'm losing the top of dad's head. Well, if they're hell-bent on a gallery wrapped canvas with photo around the edges, what you can do is just recommend a similar pose with similar emotion and the same people in the photo, but a more pulled back image like this one. So in this image, it's still mom and dad, still heads touching, still a lot of emotion, happiness, smiles, love, but the image is just more pulled back, so I have more wiggle room this way to not lose anybody's head. The edit is very similar, the finish is very similar, so this might be a substitution that they really love and they end up going with. So this just has to do with variety in your composition when you're shooting and being mindful of it, so that you're taking some images that are close in and filling the frame and some images that are pulled further back, so that your clients have different images to choose from when they're deciding what to print in canvas wraps like this. But sometimes this isn't an option. So say, I have this really great image of the kiddos. Whoops, there you go. The kiddos. And, mom and dad just feel really strongly that they want the whole image in there and they don't want to lose their little sweet hands or anything. And there's no good way for me to do that because I don't have a similar pose that's pulled back far enough to maintain the entire important pieces of the image in the front here. Or this one's a good example that I showed you before. It's cutting off basically half of their heads, and there's just no good way for me to prevent that right now in ordering, and I don't have a similar image really that evokes the same emotion that's pulled back far enough. So what can you do? Well, you can take this image into Photoshop and you can put it on a larger 4:5 aspect ratio canvas and then use Content Aware to try to fill in the missing pieces of grass, and say his leg and whatever to give yourself a wider canvas. This works best on an image where you have just sort of grass around the outside more than a busy background that's going to be harder to fill in. Your other alternative here in ordering is to actually add a border. So say I choose a white border for this image. Well, now I can get their heads in there because there's actually just going to be white around the outside of my canvas rather than the actual image stretched all the way around the canvas. And I could do this similarly with this image that we talked about and a black border. So say my clients don't feel that strongly about having the image wrapped around the outside of the canvas, well, now I can get their whole heads in there because I'm using black around the edges of the canvas that's just going to be stretched around and isn't really going to be super prominent and visible from the front. It's mostly just going to be visible from the sides of the canvas. So your clients might like this option as well, and this will allow you to maintain the entire image in there. So those are basically your options for fighting aspect ratio and what aspect ratio means. The best thing for you to do, in my opinion, is just to shoot purposefully with variety in your composition, meaning you're getting some images where you're zoomed in just on sort of their faces, some where you're featuring heads and shoulders, some further back where you're featuring their entire body, and the background behind them, the scenery. And this is just going to give your clients more options to choose from when they're ordering canvas wraps and they want the image to wrap around the edge. So they can pick an image that has a similar edit, finish, emotion, connection, but is pulled back far enough that you're not losing anybody's heads, ears, fingers, that kind of thing. The things that we really want to be maintained in our images. So hopefully this helps explain it. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.